The Apollo medical ship is one that many players have been excitedly waiting for over 7 years, and now that wait is over. Accompanying an update with some subtle changes to medical gameplay, the Apollo launches into game amidst much intrigue. But is it too early, and how does the Apollo Medivac perform in-game? I'm Forrester, and this video will review the currently flyable RSI Apollo Medivac, which is described on the Star Citizen website as a medical ship. If you've seen other ship reviews on this channel, then you'll recognise the format for this video. It's split into 5 sections, starting with a ship tour, assessing combat performance, reviewing handling and visibility, looking at the operating costs and profitability, before finally summarising. As always, I've included timestamps in the video description in case you want to skip ahead. And if you're one of the many people watching who isn't yet subscribed to the channel, you might like to do that, not least so that you can keep up to date when new ship reviews like this drop. And this review of the RSI Apollo Medivac is based on performance in Star Citizen Alpha 4.3. And we'll start the tour for the Apollo Medivac by a brief external tour heading under the nose. Here there's a button to call the elevator, which allows for entry directly into the cockpit without having to walk all the way through the ship. Moving further back, this time on the port side of the ship, we'll move to the rear. On the rear starboard side is a button which deploys the rearmost ramp. This ramp will fit a gurney up it as well as some thin SU crates. By closing the ramp, we can also see that this rear section potentially will operate as a docking collar airlock in future, although at this point it doesn't. Moving further forward through the docking bay corridor, we'll enter into the rearmost section of the ship. There's a large, wide open space which is supposedly a triage area. There's some decorative consoles that don't do anything, and mirrored on each side is a storage room. There is a 16 SU cargo grid at the back on both sides, as well as a weapons rack and armour storage. There's also component access tucked away behind a cubbyhole and an engineering terminal. Here we can see the mirrored cargo bay on the starboard side, again with component access, the weapons rack and storage, as well as some store all crates to show that cargo grid. Flanking either side of the central foyer are the 2 medical rooms and a lovely window above. These medical rooms can be swapped out depending on the needs between tiers 1, 2 and 3. This is a tier 1 medical room with a tier 1 bed. At the front of these medical rooms is a small bathroom for patients. The medical rooms also include a medical refrigerator and patient storage. The number of patient storage bays depends on the number of beds in the room. Each of them also has some storage area on the wall for spare medgels. This is the tier 2 medical bay. As you can see, there are 2 beds. There's patient storage for each of those beds and the medical refrigerator. And once again at the front of the room is a patient bathroom. Moving towards the front of the ship, we pass through a small engineering area. Here there's some component access with an engineering terminal built in, very cool. And some additional component access on the other side. And then right at the front of the ship is the bridge. There's a small habitation area, seating and a bed, as well as a kitchen area, and a small bathroom for the crew. There is personal storage for the pilot and co-pilot above each bed, and this is where the central elevator comes up from outside of the ship. Quite neatly, there is a little button to hide the rails that pop up, which makes the whole area feel a little bit more open, which is a nice touch. Right at the front, there is a seat for the pilot and for the co-pilot. And after a quick module swap, here is the Tier 3 medical room. There's patient storage on one side, the 3 beds, and some more patient storage and the medical refrigerator. As you can see at the front of the module, the bathroom is the same. The Apollo Medivac comes armed with 2 size 4 weapons on gimbals by the nose, defaulting to Rhino laser repeaters. In addition, there's a remote turret up top armed with 2 size 3 weapons, as stock they're Mantis Gatling guns. The remote turret is controlled by a co-pilot where there is one, or slave to the pilot in the absence of a second player. The co-pilot control is mostly pointless. 9 times out of 10 it's better for the pilot to control the armament directly. The Medivac differs from the Triage by the heavier missile armament, with 16 size 2 missiles equipped. The launchers can't be changed, so larger or smaller missiles aren't an option. Defensively, the Apollo carries 4 size 2 shield generators, which sounds like a lot, but those shields do drain fairly quickly under fire. For a ship designed to fly into the heat of battle, it seems a little unusual that it isn't equipped with a size 3 generator, like those found on a Constellation for example. Altogether, that makes the Medivac a surprisingly heavy hitter, but also more fragile than you might expect. Looking out from the cockpit of the Apollo, visibility is fairly good for a ship of this size. There is a clean view out to the front, and although there are some struts to the sides, sightlines are good, including below the ship, which helps with landing. In terms of handling, the Apollo feels heavy, drifts a little, but travels quite fast in a straight line, especially given the size of the ship. The SCM limiter sits at 175 meters per second, which feels reasonable, although does mean that the Apollo is a little slower than the other medical ships, but then it is much larger. There is a notable burble which occurs in atmospheric flight, particularly noticeable due to the heavy nature of the ship. At nav speeds, the Medivac will top out at 1000 meters per second, which is fair for crossing long distances. What's a little disappointing is the quantum drive. The range is fine, but for a ship that is supposed to quickly respond to medical emergencies, the stock Bolon is a little disappointing, and a high-speed drive would have been a better choice. In terms of running costs, the Medivac isn't usually too expensive to operate, especially if it hasn't been firing the guns or missiles. Refuel and repair are usually in the low thousands, but firing the munitions does increase costs potentially into the tens of thousands. As for making money with the Medivac, well, it's complicated. It does have 32 SU of cargo grid storage in the little rooms to the sides. Each mirrored grid is 2 units high, 2 units wide, and 4 units long. But the narrow entrance hall to the ship means that only 2 SU crates or smaller can realistically be brought aboard. It's also not easy to load or unload, but in theory, low-end hauling contracts or looting small crates could be an option. Ship combat contracts are workable, probably topping out at medium threat type missions. And then there's medical. The Apollo can respond to beacons if players choose to drop them, but the payout is low and it's potentially a long wait for rescue. Moreover, the medgel costs are 100,000 credits each, which means medrunners are unlikely to make large sums helping others unless they're overly generous. So the Medivac really isn't a big money-making ship. In terms of upgrades, swapping the Quantum Drive for something quicker like a Huracan or XL1 if you can find one should be top priority to cut down response times. Outside of that, it may not be worth changing anything else. The Apollo is a beautiful ship, no doubt about that. It's bigger than expected, so feels spacious, with a clean feeling, again, probably a good thing for a medical ship. It gives off Star Trek vibes, like some of the others in the RSI theme, and the large window looks great too. Also, emergency lights go wee-woo. The ability to configure the rooms for different bed tiers gives some customizability to pilots. Personally, I would always bring the Tier 1 bed for maximum healing, and then use either Tier 2 or 3 depending on how many people are being supported and how far away that support is needed. The engineer terminal, along with a bed for logging out, helps to future-proof the ship too. But then there are some drawbacks. Some players will be disappointed that the Apollo launches without drone functionality. Medgel is expensive, potentially pilot bait, and significantly cuts into the already limited profitability of the ship. And whilst medical beacons are back in, they're probably not really worth it for anybody at the moment. There's probably a long wait for the rescuee, and for the rescuer, there's a significant risk that the patient may actually be a predator. It would be great if there were also PvE or NPC patients to give more regular gameplay opportunities for medical pilots, but that's not to be at this point. The long wait for the rescuee is made worse by just how slow the Quantum Drive is. It's still shocking that the ambulance ship doesn't come equipped with the fastest drives. So the Apollo is likely to be useful very situationally, supporting an active group. There will be some exceptions, like the medrunners who will probably disprove that, but generally that means that the Medivac is likely to be niche in its use cases. Then there's the price. At $275 to $290, the Apollo is expensive for what you get. Due to the changes in beds, it is the only currently flyable medical ship with a Tier 1 bed, but that's only because everything else has been nerfed. There's also the Apollo Triage, which is $25 to $30 cheaper. The main differences between the two models are the extra missiles on the Medivac and different speeds. The Medivac is probably better, but the Triage does 99% of everything that the Medivac does, so to me, the cheaper option is better value, albeit accepting that the Medivac is probably better. As a newly launched ship, there is no in-game purchase price at time of recording. So, is the Apollo Medivac worth it? To this reviewer, probably not, or at least not yet, unless you're a player who is all about medical gameplay in the state that it's currently in. As and when the ship becomes available for UEC, it could be a more interesting option to round out a fleet, depending on price, but that's a few patches away at time of recording. But what do you think of the Apollo Medivac? I look forward to reading your thoughts in the video comments. Oh, and if you're waiting for a review of the Apollo Triage, that'll follow shortly, although much of the content will be similar, given how similar the two ships are. If you enjoyed this video, you might press the like button to help me understand what videos to make more of in future, and if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, you might like to do that too, so that YouTube knows to show you more videos like this in future. But otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.